Welcome everyone to today's wonderful Fireside chat with me, Liz Ward, and my incredible guest, Dawn Airey. I'm very honoured to be hosting today's Fireside chat. You know, when we talk about smashing glass ceilings, I think Dawn has taken a hammer and smashed everyone you could imagine. An absolute legend of the media industry. Dawn has held senior positions at ITV, Channel 5, is a non-exec director for Channel 4. But the reason why we're kind of here today and what we're going to talk about is that Dawn is, of course, the chair of the Barclays FA WSL Women's Super League and the Championship as well, and a lover of football, as am I. So, Dawn, how are you doing today?
I do very well, and thank you very much for that generous introduction about sort of breaking through ceilings. I have to say, plenty of other women who've gone before me have hit a lot of ceilings, so they made it slightly easier. But thank you, very generous.
Of course. So I wanted us to dive into a little bit about the wonderful. I was going to say rise, but I don't think it is necessarily a rise, but the more like the reckoning that we have at the moment of women's football across the UK. And we know that the women's game has evolved over time. But in your kind of experience and in your expertise, what are those key changes and how have they come about?
It's a really good opening question that we can talk about for hours, Liz. But as you rightly said, the rise of women's football has been ongoing for a long time. But there has been a spike in interest, and I'll talk, and there's been several spikes and quite deliberate. But what I would say is this has been a strategy. As you said, it hasn't happened overnight. You know, women have been playing football for as long as men. But it was banned for 50 years between the 20s. And I can't believe when I say the 1970s. I mean, banned in terms of women playing on FA licensed pitches, but it did sort of curtail the sport's development. But football has been there for anybody and everybody. And that's one of the great things about the sport. You can pick up a ball and you can just knock it around. But why has the game attracted just so much interest at the moment? Well, the FA have been supportive of the development of girls and women's football and the professional game. And we've come a long way, but we've only been professional for sort of 10 just over 10 years. So not very long as compared with the men's game. And that also has coincided with professional leagues. So the Women's Super League is now fully professional. The Women's Championship is semi-pro. Then obviously you've got all of the leagues below that and the national leagues. But I think a couple of things have happened. One has been, like I said, that very focus of the FA about how do we give young girls the opportunity to play football, and how then do we take them on a pathway so if they are passionate about the game, they can have a career in the game. And that isn't necessarily just on the pitch, because there are more folks that are employed off the pitch. And I think in 2018, when there was the World Cup in France, and our national team, the Lionesses, played the Americans in a semi-final, and it got massive audience figures. There was a real spike that summer, and from that there was, I think, an ignition in the desire to watch professional football. The realization that women can play this sport at a very high level. They are supreme athletes. They're different to men. Females, physical presence is different to men, but they play a terrific and entertaining game. And so that spiked an interest. And that then coincided with the rights deal, the rights for the professional leagues being up for renegotiation. They were with BT. BT did a good job, but BT Sport was only in 20% of the homes. So we knew that there was an opportunity to get the professional game greater visibility. And we were very, very deliberate when we took those rights to market. And it's really important, this, because if you can't see it, you can't be it. We knew we needed to have the leagues to have visibility on free-to-air television, but we needed money. I mean, there was no value, interestingly, directly ascribed to the women's game. It was part of the men's. It was all rolled into a men's broadcast rights deal. So this was the first time we'd gone to market with a package of rights only for the women's game. There was both some national friendlies in there, but there was the Super League and the Championship. And Sky, who are brilliant and expert, fantastic broadcaster, you can't question the commitment that they have made to sport, as indeed the BBC. And we ended up in this perfect position where we had the BBC, really important for giving us reach, and our biggest audiences are on the BBC. And Sky, really great audiences on Sky that have been growing over the course of the last sort of 2 years of them having the rights. And so we're getting them, semi-decent fees from Sky, but Sky are investing a lot of money in production and covering the matches, and the same with the BBC. So you've got visibility, and like I said, if you can't see it, you can't be it. So you're seeing it on mainstream, and then you're seeing also female footballers commenting on men's games, and really being integrated into men's coverage. That has helped. And then, of course, you have something like what happened last summer, when we were there at Wembley, and for the first time since 1966, a national senior team, the women, the Lionesses, win a major trophy. And sort of, I won't say domestic football went crazy, but it sort of did go crazy, and quite rightly so, because the Lionesses went on an extraordinary journey. They played some amazing games. They were the rightful winners. Wembley had 87,000 people watching it live. I was there with my family. It was unbelievable. It was an unbelievably brilliant piece of sporting achievement and entertainment. And I was just like, I can't remember what the audience figures were. I think it was 16 million, 17 million people watched it. This was a national event. And we were seeing it before this, and particularly during the build up to the Euros, but both the build up and actually during the Euros, is an increasing interest in the women as individuals as well. So they're not just on the back pages of sport. They're on the front pages of the magazines. Their social feeds of individuals are often bigger than some of the men's Premier League football clubs. The amount of viewers that were watching the Super League is bigger than those that watch many of the EFL matches. So it was all coming together. And those spike moments, those moments of shared unity, are really, really, really important. And now we all know the Lionesses. They're everywhere. They're winning awards. They're winning, I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. Beth Mead wins, the sports personality of the year for the BBC. These are women who are supreme athletes, who are incredibly authentic, who play football at an incredibly high level, brilliant entertainment, brilliant role models. It's not surprising that football is exploding. And it's a long, long, long way from when my great aunt, who was a very famous lady called Alice Kell, and she was captain of the Dick Kerr ladies football team, that they were so successful during the First World War, when men were away and they were playing to paid audiences to send money to support the war effort, that football was banned. Football was banned because they were so successful. When the men came back, there was a fear that women's football would be more successful than men. So, for 50 years, it didn't have that visibility. And so we've got a lot of catching up to do, folks. So that's a very long answer to a very small initial question.
Yeah.
Why and why it exploded. I mean, there's been a strategy. There's a very, very coherent strategy at the FA, and then there've been these tentpole moments which have allowed us to sort of just increase the interest in the sport. And you're also seeing it really importantly at grassroots levels as well. Little girls wanting to play sports. Little girls. I mean, I have a daughter who's a footballer, and it's just joyous to see little girls kicking around a football. When I was growing up, you'd only see that with little boys.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I've got goosebumps thinking about that Wembley final, and I'm also just processing.
Did you see
it?
Yeah,
yeah, of course. And I'm also just processing your own football lineage. That is incredible. And folks at home, if you don't know who Alice Kell is, go and Google it. Google is your friend. Truly, the history of women's football in this country is way before the Lionesses. And the piece that you mentioned there around that Wembley final and around the strategy from the FA, which feels very real. Actually, you can see it is not just by accident; it's by design that now we're having this surge of women's footballers. And Leah Williamson, surrounded by emotion and glory, and the thing that she says when she's winning is, we've got to get those young women in schools, playing football, kicking around a ball and falling in love with the game. And for me, certainly, I can't even remember the first time I fell in love with football. I think I came out the womb kicking a ball pretty much. Best with the sport. I think it's the best sport in the world. But certainly playing at school was much more of an uphill struggle than it is now. But for yourself, when did you first fall in love with this wonderful?
Well, that's an interesting question, actually, because I fall in love with all sorts of things. I love the theatre. I love all production. I love actually all sport. But I mean, football has always been present in my life from very, 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 very early age. My dad was mad about football, and he trialled for Preston North End, and it was just part of it was just there. And I suppose the truth is, falling in love with it, I didn't come out of the womb in love with football like you, but I would say I fell in love with it when my youngest, Matilda, who's about to be 13, started to play. Now, my other half, Jackie, she would say she came out of the womb like you, Liz, football obsessed. and she's a Geordie, so it's Newcastle. My God, we've been on the highs and lows with Newcastle. I wasn't, but I would go to matches. I would watch Match of the Day, great piece of entertainment. I was very well informed, but I think I fell in love with football when I was watching it through the eyes of my daughter, who her superpower is sport. She's a brilliant all-round sports person, but she's obsessed with football. I mean, she wants to be a professional footballer. She wants to be a lioness, and then she wants to be Miss Robertson, who's her PE teacher. All some O levels, Matilda. But it's through her eyes and the validation that sport gives her, and the skills that team sport give her as well, are really, really important things for life. Physical fitness, we know, for young girls, really, really important. And there's some pretty shocking statistics around sort of 7 to 11-year-olds, and it's like 41% achieve the recommended levels of physical activity that's required. Physical activity is really important for mental well-being and success in life. So schools, and one of the great things about the Lionesses is they're very, they are political, they're very socially aware. And what was the first thing they said when they won the Euros? We want every little girl to have the opportunity to play football, but also guaranteed that they can play team sport in school. And that has now come to pass. I mean, extraordinary influence these girls have. But I'm going to, sorry, ladies, not girls. Let me come back to about falling in love with football. So it was the journey that I could see my little one going on, and observing actually a lot of other parents from lots of different backgrounds, all coming together and encouraging and supporting the dreams of young girls. And it really and truly is a movement. It's an absolute movement. And football is the biggest sport on the planet. And I think women's sport is going to it will grow, and it is growing at an extraordinary rate. But I believe there's no reason why it shouldn't be as big as the men's game, So I sort of fell in love with not only what the game can do in terms of validation, but in terms of the potential for sport, not just in women's lives, but for sport commercially. There's so much money that should be made by women's sport. There's no reason why it should lag behind men's at all. None at all, which means there's this massive opportunity. So I suppose I fell in love with it on multiple levels, with these great role models, our lionesses, our professional teams, grassroots, little girls, and seeing it on telly, seeing women commentating and being involved in playing what has, I'm afraid, traditionally been a male preserve.
Yeah, completely. And oh gosh, the feeling I get when I switch on the television and I'm seeing Manchester United versus Arsenal or something like that, women's game. It's incredible. It's amazing.
Well, we're all rooted invested, and these are household names. We know who they are. They're as famous, I would argue, if not some, indeed more famous, than the male equivalents. And also, they've achieved unbelievable success. They've won a major tournament. First one since 1966.
Exactly. And I think, it's even more interesting coming after the men's Euros the year before, where we got so close to winning the tournament and then our hearts were broken as a nation. Then everyone's like, wait a minute, we've got the amazing Lionesses, pitch perfect tournament. I hope we do it again at the World Cup this year. But anyway, I'll take us back to our questions. I think I'm also just reflecting on the fact that the WSL has only been professional for the last 10 years as well. And so we have players within the WSL that started as youth players in a league where they were just playing football. It was their job and it was their career, but they were just playing football, to now being in what I think is the best and the most competitive women's league in the world, I would say. So it's just amazing. Thinking about the game that we all love, or that we're falling in love with, be it now or when we, as I said, popped out the womb. It's interesting to see the diversity within sport, but within football in general. So how can we continue to boost that diversity through the women's game? How can we make it accessible so that lots of women from all different backgrounds feel as though they have a little bit of ownership in football as well?
Sure. It's a really good question, and it's actually sort of central to the higher purpose that the professional game has. So, the Super League, although that's been running for 10 years, it's only been full-time professional since 2018. So it's with full-time professionals even shorter. But we have a very clear vision, which is to inspire positive change. That's what we want to do with this league: inspire positive change. We also want to be the most successful professional league in the world. So we want to be very socially purposeful, but we want to be incredibly commercially successful as well. And so part of that, to inspire positive change, is to be as inclusive as we possibly can be. And it's sort of, for me, it's interesting. And this is only obviously one part of diversity, but this is Lesbian Visibility Week. But there are a lot of out women involved in the game, on the pitch, off the pitch, and it feels very, very, it's a very unique culture, and it absolutely and utterly is as inclusive as it can be. Now, is it as inclusive as we would like it to be? No. Are we working on it? Yes. Is inclusion ever done? I would argue it's never done. It's never completely done. But what football is doing, and particularly with its pathway, so from the grassroots all the way through to the semi-pro, to the pro, to being the national game, is we're looking for talent, and we're looking to say anybody can play football. You can literally anybody can play football, whether you're disabled, irrespective of your race, of your sexuality. You can play football, and we want to have, literally, our arms are open to all of you. And the FA have very sophisticated and increasingly broad pathways that you can come in. So there's the Emerging Talent Centre, there's Search for Talent. We actively go out and try and make it as inclusive as possible, because we want viewers to see on the pitch. Well, I say viewers, fans to see on the pitch a group of players who reflect the diversity of this country. And so there is work to be done, quite clearly. But that is really about getting people involved at a very young age, at a very, very young age. And that is happening. So, like I said, you will see the continued improvements, I think, in the diversity in all its forms over the course. It's just only going to get better. It's only going to get better because everyone is very, very, very focused on it. And we want it to be, we want it to be the most inclusive sport. And there's no reason why it can't be, because I said, anybody can play football. Anybody can play in football. And whether that's, when you're recreationally or professionally, you can come in at any level. But what there is now is there is an increasingly sophisticated path, which is if you want a career in football. And like I said, it's not just on the pitch, but off the pitch, there's plenty of opportunities.
Yeah, 100%. More women in boardrooms. That's what I say.
Yes, that's absolutely true. I don't know. I suspect that the men's clubs are a little bit lacking of female representation on the board, though.
Yeah, definitely. We're quickly running out of time, so I'll take us to our last question. And I'm thinking about the wonderful WSL that happens up and down the country, but also the Women's Championship as well, which is increasingly competitive. For viewers at home who don't know, teams from the Championship are promoted into the WSL, and teams from the WSL can drop down into the Championship. So there's lots of competition to get into the games. And people will be hearing us and being, this sounds amazing. I want to go and watch a game. I want to go and check it out. What advice would you give to someone at home who's watching this, who might never have been to a women's football game before, of how they can get involved with the WSL or the Women's Championship?
Well, it is probably, quite simply, find your grassroots clubs and go and watch. Go and watch. And you might be you may well have a championship or a Super League club. There aren't as many, and obviously we want more. And the women's game is in very early stages of its professional development. But we want more clubs starting up and down the country. But the great thing about the WSL and the Women's Championship is very accessible in terms of price. You actually do not have to bust the bank to go, and you can go and watch sort of grassroots teams for actually nothing. But the cost of going to see a championship or a Super League match, it's unbelievably good value. So I would say do a search, find your nearest club, and go to it, because one of the reasons why men's football has been so successful, how we lead the world, certainly with the Premier League, is because we're a small island and we like playing football, and there's local football club. There are local football teams absolutely everywhere. So I'll go back to my daughter, where we started this conversation, Matilda. So my Matilda is signed for Brentford. So she's on the Brentford development programme. She plays for her school, but she also plays for a local grassroots team, the Actonians. So there are multiple levels of which you can A, go in to play, but B, go in and watch. And I would encourage anybody, find your local football pitches, go there on a Saturday or Sunday morning, and you will find probably girls playing football. So when I go and see Matilda on a Monday, when she's doing Actonians, I get so much trouble if I get it wrong. It's just wonderful. There are so many folks there watching them, and there are pictures of young women playing football in their football kit. And they come back and they're muddy and they love it, and there's camaraderie, and you just think, what a great experience. What a great experience. And they all, and not all, but an overwhelming majority of them dream of being their heroines. And their heroines are the Lionesses, or it's their local Super League or Championship club, whoever they're seeing. And that's amazing. That is phenomenal. And that gives you, a huge amount of satisfaction, because that's what it's all about the engagement, the enthusiasm, the passion that you can instill in little girls and say, you can be whatever you want. You can be a professional footballer, have a fantastic career, earn good money, and do great things at the same time. Who wouldn't want to do that?
Oh, amazing. Sign me up. Sign me up now. I want a career change. Dawn, thank you so much for chatting to me today. And thank you everyone at home for listening as well. I hope that has inspired you to get out there and kick a ball around, because it's truly the best game in the world. So thank you, everyone. Bye-bye for now.
Bye. Thanks, Liz.